I've been a cosplayer since I was 14. My wife and I dated for years before we got married and stayed together for 10. At the time of this story, I was 31 and she was 33. Even though she was never as passionate about cosplaying as me, she would go with me. I could tell she was losing enthusiasm for it even more, but she still came with me, dressed as her favorite Star Wars character while I was geeking out with my friends. She must have decided she was too mature for all this, and left. I noticed she was gone by, trusted her, assuming she went to the bathroom. She came back hours later. By this time I had been casually looking for her for 2 hours. Maybe I trusted her too much, or maybe I was having too much fun. When she showed up, she was really happy, but squeamish. She was holding her phone in her hand. Instead, she just went for a walk for a while and found a small-time bookshop that she couldn't resist. She was reading all that time before coming back to me. I asked if she bought a book, and she said no. Looking pretty stupid, she started texting a little more often than normal, but she said it was her older sister catching up with her. She was pretty bubbly and texting off and on. It didn't seem like anything was wrong, but she also didn't seem interested in me or what we were doing. She took selfies with me and did what I wanted, but her heart wasn't in it. After dinner, we went to see a movie. We sat beside each other for the first 30 minutes. Then she had to go to the bathroom. She made sure to mention her stomach hurt, so I didn't expect her to come back very fast. Well, at nearly the end of the movie, I wandered out and yelled into the women's bathroom. No one responded to me. I started calling her over and over again while I went back to the hotel and found that she wasn't there either. I went to the convention feeling exhausted and wondering what she was doing there. She ran into me. She said I wasn't at the hotel before I even tried to respond to that. I noticed she wasn't wearing lipstick. Contrary to how I saw her at the movies, it looks like she washed it off because there was nothing left. I smelled her slightly damp hair, and it smelled like lemons. Not like the shampoo in our hotel or the one we brought. I added all the odd disappearances on texting on smells, odd appearance, odd giddiness, and wondered if she was cheating on me. Of course, I was going to have to check her phone and confront her about it. But before I said anything, her phone started ringing. She was already holding it in her hand, so in the moment she was registering who it was. I grabbed it for her. I answered the call and asked what was. My male voice must have scared him off because he hung up. I tried calling back and got the voicemail of a deep-voiced professional-sounding app. I scrolled through their messages and found the arrangements they made for my wife to come over. They also talked about his stock marketing skills, and in the most recent message, HP confesses how quickly he's falling for her and how magical her body is. She was holding her face, ordering me to give her back her phone. Out of all the things she should have been saying, it was that I yelled, "You cheated on me," loud enough for the costumes. People around us to hear they were already invested. Having seen a circle around the convention a few times, they started booing her. As I held up her phone with messages on the screen, I turned to walk out, but she followed me. Back at the hotel, she admitted she was just bored and felt like she was too mature to keep cosplaying. Every year. She quickly added that she realized now it was a huge mistake, and she loved me for who I was. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "She made me sick." As I packed, I told her I'd have to be a moron to stay married to her now, and she should have just talked out the differences with me before she spent her legs for a more interesting or more mature man. Now it's much, much too late to apologize, and I don't care about her at all. She's worth nothing or negative value if that's possible. She's like a black hole. Her level of putridness would affect anyone who gets close enough to her. I told her I would never care about what happened to her and shoved my bags in the car. I left her there in a different state, but she didn't have any living relatives to come to her rescue. She didn't even have very close friends, so she stayed where I left her. She tried to go to AP and he entertained her for a while, making her feel like everything was going to be okay. She was needy, barely had any money, and depended on him to take care of her. All of a sudden, it was like adopting a child with no intentions of improving her situation. Beyond that, funny thing is, she once accused me of being like a child, but I worked full-time after he kicked her out. She started calling me every day to cry and leave me long, pitiful voicemails. When she finally came back to the state we were living in, she didn't attend any of our court hearings, and I sold anything she had in her home. After 10 years of marriage, her voicemails were pathetic, and she wouldn't stop because I was the only person she knew so well. She was in a world of strangers. Now it's up to her to find what she needs. I used to be her provider and caregiver like a good husband, but it wasn't good enough. OP, I am so sorry your wife went with you to do something you loved, only to take advantage of your busy state and sneak off to cheat on you. She did not deserve to have a husband, let alone one as fun and respectable as you. From what you said, I can tell you valued the relationship you had and took pride in knowing how to communicate with your spouse. I'm sorry she didn't do the same for you and thought that she could find better with someone different. Different or new does not mean better. And in that moment of temptation, cheating women prove themselves idiots for failing to see the bigger picture. I wish you all the best going forward. Now let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I were married for 7 years and had been attending the same church for that mom. Everyone had gotten to know us well. So the church agreed to let my wife start counseling members for free. She'd had a rough childhood, but managed to find faith and steer clear of trunks. She wanted to help others that couldn't afford counseling. Her intentions were so pure and good that the church, nor I, wouldn't have suspected her to do what she did. She operated as an unofficial counselor for years and came to know everyone in town through mutual friends. She never gossiped about people and became well respected for helping others. Just what she wanted to do. This all changed when she met a sad, lonely man who was new to the church and coping with his wife being in a coma. She was in a car accident where he was driving, but it wasn't really his fault. He craved the company of a woman because she'd been in a coma for 7 months. She would counsel him and others in an office in the church where they had all the time and privacy they needed given the situation. 7 months doesn't seem long enough for him to be willing to cheat on his wife, but it was at the same time. 7 years of marriage seems to be worth more than 5 counseling sessions with an unfortunate man. But it wasn't. When we both got home on one of the worst days ever, she said she'd suddenly felt nauseous on the drive. She blamed something she ate and locked herself in the bathroom. I called through the door to ask if she needed anything, but she said no. She sounded so upset, more than just sick. I heard her struggling, but she still didn't come out. When she finally did, she took one look at me, and her lips started trembling. Her eyes poured tears, and when I rushed to her side, she pushed me away, claiming she didn't deserve it. She bursted out with, "I cheated on you." It felt like she shot me in the heart. I grabbed my chest and dropped onto the bed. She said she regretted it more than anything. She said it was the biggest mistake and stupidest thing she could have done. She said that APA's wife was in a coma and admitted he longed for a woman. I gasped. She cheated with a married man. I called her despicable and said she was supposed to be mine. She started crying so hard she could barely talk. She said she would never counsel anyone again, but she needed me to forgive her. She was on her knees sobbing onto my lap, where I gathered the strength and willpower to stand up for myself. I pushed her away. I said she was right. She didn't deserve my comfort or love. I wouldn't trust her to be around anyone without me. I told her having a relationship would be impossible now. I would be stupid to think there wasn't a better woman out there for me. I made her pack her stuff and leave on the threat. I tell the church everything. She said she wouldn't survive the embarrassment from that, and would certainly need the church's support if I was to leave her. I asked if she deserves the church's support, and she said yes. This sounded to me like she wasn't learning her lesson, so after she finally left the house with a bunch of stuff, I called the church pastor. I told him what happened and described his situation for him to figure out who it was. She was staying with family and didn't realize I told the church until she walked in on Sunday morning, only to receive demeaning stares. No one spoke to her, and she was too afraid to speak to anyone else. Shortly after that, APA's wife woke up from her coma. It was really heartbreaking. Everyone knew AP cheated on her, so even if he wasn't the one to tell her, someone did. AP hated my wife for allowing him to do it. Instead of being the good, honest counselor, He needed her to be the good, honest wife. I expected her to be. I still blamed him a little bit, but he was right. He was the one feeling weak, but my wife wasn't strong enough to assure him that things were going to work out somehow. Not without breaking her vows to me, and encouraging him to break his vows to his wife. It's still a little unbelievable to me. AP was still divorced. It's not something to be forgiven unless they want to remain unhappy, uncertain, and face higher chances of breaking up in the future. Hanti P. Your wife should have known better and held up to her goal of wanting to help people instead of sabotaging so many relationships and much trust. When her loyalty to you and respect for what others were going through mattered the most, she failed. Sadly, people fail all the time, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't face the consequences. Her life and the lives of 3 others drastically changed. I am glad you chose not to forgive her, and that she couldn't bring herself to lie or pretend she didn't do anything wrong. At least the truth found its way out of her. And you told the church what happened. Ep's wife deserved to know too, so that the healing process can begin, and neither of you will be hurt by those people again. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If is a story you would like to share with me about your situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.